The tall iron gates of St. Matthew's Cathedral creaked open just as the sun began to sink behind the New York skyline. The old stone church sat quietly on a corner in Harlem, shrouded in the weight of generations, its air thick with incense, regret, and whispered prayers. That evening, Barron Trump stepped inside, not with cameras or security detail, but alone, wearing a black coat that nearly swallowed his frame. He had come at the invitation of a college friend whose grandmother was being remembered in a memorial mass. What he hadn't expected was how much he needed this silence. He slid into a pew near the back, hoping to stay unnoticed. But even in stillness, he was recognizable. The towering figure, the unmistakable profile, it was impossible to separate him from his name. He clasped his hands, lowered his head, and closed his eyes, trying to mute the noise of the world outside. But his thoughts betrayed him. In his mind echoed an image he couldn't forget. His father seated on a golden throne, draped in papal robes, pointing to the heavens with a smug smile. The AI-generated photo had gone viral 2 days ago, shared first on Truth Social and later reposted by the White House account itself. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just a week earlier, Barron had stood among mourners in Rome for the funeral of Pope Francis. He had watched real tears, real prayers, real grief. And then that image happened. The internet laughed, but Barron didn't. He opened his eyes slowly. A woman had just sat beside him, quietly, respectfully. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, her skin a deep, warm brown, her face lined not just with age but with years of watching the world twist sacred things into spectacles. She wore a modest blue coat and clutched a rosary in her left hand. For a while she said nothing. Then her voice, low but firm, broke the stillness. "Your father stood by the Pope's casket, and a week later he posed himself as the new Pope?" she asked, her tone not angry, but aching with disbelief. Barron turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes. He didn't recognize her, but somehow she recognized everything about the burden he carried. "I'm sorry," Barron replied quietly. "I know how that image must have looked to people who care deeply about faith." "It wasn't right," he added, his voice filled with guilt. The woman nodded slightly but didn't look away. "It wasn't just disrespectful," she explained. "It was cruel. To those of us who held Pope Francis in our hearts, not as a meme, not as a joke, but as a shepherd of something bigger than any man." She paused, then leaned closer, whispering just above the hum of organ music. "You don't get to turn sacred grief into spectacle, not even as a joke. And you sat there at that funeral. You knew better." Barron looked down, his throat tight. For a moment he considered defending his father, saying it was meant humorously, or that the image wasn't official, or that he had no control over what was posted. But none of those excuses felt worth speaking. "You're right," he admitted. "I was there in Rome. I saw how much Pope Francis meant to people. I saw how people wept. That photo, it made a mockery of all of it," he said slowly, his voice trembling with sincerity. The woman's eyes softened, just slightly. "What's your name, boy?" she asked. "Barron," he replied, then hesitated. "Barron Trump," he clarified, almost as if it stung. She sighed. "Then I'm guessing you know what it means to carry the shame for things you didn't do, but can't ignore either," she said knowingly. Barron nodded. "It's like being in a room full of smoke, even if you didn't light the fire," he said thoughtfully. She turned her gaze back to the altar, where a candle flickered beneath a statue of the Virgin Mary. "Just know this," she said gently. "People like me, people of faith, we don't expect perfection, but we do expect respect." "I understand," Barron answered, "and I want you to know I'm sorry, not just on behalf of my father, but for not speaking out sooner. Silence has its own guilt," he confessed. She didn't reply for a long while, but her hand, once clenched around the rosary, slowly relaxed. In the sacred quiet of that old church, a young man didn't just hear God. He heard a stranger speak the truth no one else dared to say. And for once, he didn't argue. He just listened. The soft crunch of gravel underfoot was the only sound as Barron and Clara stepped out of the church. The sun had almost set, casting a golden hue over the streets of Harlem. For a moment, Barron felt a strange calmness in his chest. It wasn't the relief he expected after apologizing. It was something deeper, a quiet reckoning that made him feel as if he had finally stopped running. Clara walked beside him, her pace slow and measured. She didn't speak immediately. Her eyes were distant, as if contemplating something far beyond the evening air. Finally, she spoke again. "You know," she began softly, "I didn't say all that to hurt you. I said it because someone needs to." Barron glanced at her, feeling an unfamiliar vulnerability. "I know," he replied. "I didn't come here expecting to hear all that. But it's what I needed." Clara nodded, her eyes meeting his. "You might not be your father, Barron, but that doesn't mean his actions don't affect you. You're part of the legacy he built, whether you like it or not." Barron stopped walking for a moment, looking down at the ground. He couldn't escape it. The legacy, the name, the expectations. "I get that," he said quietly, "but I don't know what to do with it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for this life." His voice wavered as he continued. "I didn't ask to be part of this circus." Clara stopped too and turned to face him. Her gaze was steady, and there was a quiet power in her voice as she spoke. "You can't change your past. You didn't ask for any of it. But you can choose who you are going forward. It's about how you carry yourself now, in this moment, Barron. You get to decide that." Barron's brow furrowed. "But how? How do I get out from under it? How do I stop being defined by my father's mistakes?" Clara took a deep breath, pausing to let her words sink in. "You don't stop being defined by it, child. You just stop letting it own you. People will always remember your last name. It's how you handle it that matters, how you show up in the world, your heart, your actions." Barron looked at her, feeling a weight lift slightly from his chest. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel entirely helpless. He felt like there was someone, who was willing to tell him the truth. No sugarcoating, no pretense. "I don't know if I can," he said quietly. "It feels impossible." Clara gave him a soft smile, but there was no pity in her eyes, only understanding. "It's not about what's easy, Barron. It's about what's right. It's about knowing when to step up and take responsibility, even when the world isn't watching, even when no one expects you to." Barron's mind raced. His father had always been a figure larger than life, a constant in the media, a symbol of power and defiance. Barron had spent so much of his life hiding from it, trying to build a wall around himself, thinking that if he stayed out of the spotlight, maybe it would all disappear. But Clara's words cut through that illusion. "You can't hide forever." And perhaps, Barron realized, you shouldn't. "You're saying it's not about the fame or the mistakes. It's about the responsibility?" Barron asked, his voice laced with a new clarity. "Exactly," Clara replied. "You're not your father, but your actions, your choices, can define who you are. Not the title, not the fame. Just you." For a long moment, Barron remained silent. The world around him seemed to blur as he thought about what she had said. He could feel a shift, a quiet resolve beginning to form deep inside. Maybe it wasn't too late to find his own way. As they continued to walk down the quiet streets of Harlem, the sound of their footsteps blended with the rhythm of the evening, a rhythm that felt new, unfamiliar, but somehow comforting. "I've spent too much time trying to bury my name," Barron said softly, more to himself than to Clara. "Maybe it's time I actually did something with it." Clara nodded, her face softening. "That's the first step, Barron, and that's all anyone can ask for." The evening had deepened, and the streetlights of Harlem flickered softly, casting long shadows on the cobblestone pathways. Barron and Clara had walked in silence for a while longer, each step giving Barron more time to think, to reflect. They had reached a small park, tucked away between apartment buildings, where a lone bench sat beneath an old oak tree. The air was cool, the quiet broken only by the distant hum of the city. It felt like an island of calm amidst the chaos of his life. Barron sat down slowly, his mind still racing. Clara followed suit, sitting beside him, but leaving enough space between them to let him breathe. The weight of the conversation, the guilt, the anger, it all seemed to melt away in the stillness of the night. Clara looked at Barron, noticing the way his shoulders had relaxed. "You've been carrying this for so long," she said gently, her voice almost a whisper. "All this weight." Barron looked at her, his gaze distant. "I don't even know who I am anymore," he said quietly. "I thought I could just escape it. My name, my father, everything." Clara sighed softly. "You're not meant to escape it, Barron. You're meant to face it, to understand it, to choose how you stand in the world, even when the world tries to tear you apart." Barron turned his head to her, his voice trembling with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "I don't know how to make things right. I don't know how to make people forget what my father did." "Making things right isn't about forgetting," Clara replied, her tone calm yet firm. "It's about acknowledging the wrongs, understanding them, and then doing what you can to make a difference. It's about your actions now, not his." The words stung, but Barron didn't shy away. Instead, he let them sink in. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't just running from something, but moving towards something real. "I've always been lost," Barron admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never asked for any of this. I never asked for my name or for the constant spotlight. And I didn't ask for the mistakes that were made before me." Clara looked at him with soft eyes, her expression gentle but resolute. "You can't change the past, Barron. You can't change your father's choices, but you have the power to choose how you respond. You have the power to choose your future." The weight of her words hit Barron harder than any criticism he had ever faced. It was the truth he had been avoiding for so long. He had blamed his father, blamed his name, blamed the world. But in this quiet moment, he realized that the only person he could truly change was himself. "I'm not perfect," Barron said, his voice breaking slightly. "And I'm not my father. I can't be. But I want to be better. I want to make things right in my own way." Clara smiled faintly. "That's all anyone can ask for, Barron. It's not about perfection. It's about honesty and owning the choices you make." Barron nodded, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable, but filled with a strange sense of peace. For the first time he felt like he was standing on his own. Not as an extension of his father, but as someone separate, someone who could carve his own path. "I'm going to start," he said slowly, "by making it right with the people who matter most. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need to start somewhere. I can't just hide from all of this anymore." Clara nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "That's the first step, and the hardest one, but it's the one that counts." As the night deepened, Barron felt a strange stillness inside him, a quiet strength. He wasn't sure where this journey would take him, but for the first time, he felt ready to walk it, to be the person he needed to be, not because of his last name, but because of who he was becoming. The city buzzed around them, but in that moment, Barron was no longer a part of the noise. He had found his own space, his own voice, and in the quiet strength of acceptance, he finally understood that the path ahead was his to choose. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.